IVM.
Welcome to Dreaming with Your Eyes Open. Ronnie Screwvala is an entrepreneur who I have admired for a long time. His ability to make inroads in an industry that is so tightly controlled by a few was what first had me so impressed. When he released his book a few years ago, I lapped it up and was even more impressed. The more I discovered his journey and the various businesses he had been a part of, the deeper my admiration went. When this project came up, I jumped on it wholeheartedly. Where else was I going to get the opportunity to spend so much time discussing the ins and outs of his career and what he has accomplished? In this episode, I talked to Ronnie about staying the course and the importance of sticking it out even when it seems that nothing is going your way. Hi, Ronnie.
Hi.
So, Ronnie, I'm going to start off with the first quote that you have in the book. If failure is the most difficult obstacle for aspiring entrepreneurs, your greatest attribute is your ability and willingness to stay the course. This is the holy grail of business. Why do you think this is the most important factor over all the other things that we've discussed so far? Things like looking for opportunity, scale, managing failure, evaluating risk and reward. What makes this the holy grail?
Because you need to be around.
Okay.
In life, you need to be around.
Okay.
I mean, it's as basic stuff as that.
Okay.
If you're in, and I'm not saying that the only other option is that you're dead.
Right.
But if you're dead, you're not around.
Okay.
So you need to be around. And I'm saying that when you're running a business, but if that business is not around and you want to time it on the basis of what you think is the calendar for it,
right.
Yeah, success comes and it does eventually come. Now, there might be people who might think, hey, just because and that doesn't mean you need to madly and insanely stick around in something which is completely unviable.
Right.
But I'm talking about more from your conviction, your confidence as an entrepreneur and sticking it around rather than constantly having lack of confidence in yourself.
Speaking of that, I mean, like the next quote I had picked out was something around that line, exactly, right? But staying the course is about preparation, planning, and agility in difficult times. It's about overcoming that crisis of confidence and plowing on to reach your goals. This doesn't mean that you don't pivot or cut your losses. If you see something is really not working, in fact, that's a part of your strategy or the course of staying for the long haul. I really like this idea, right? That I mean, like pivoting or cutting losses needs to be part of your overall strategy. And so my question was that, do people sometimes mistake a project for a business? Or
Yeah. I think we do that all the time.
Yeah.
I think we do that all the time. We think that's the be all and end all of everything else.
Right.
And it may be natural because you're operating at that particular scale. So you haven't thought beyond that.
Right.
But as I said, I go back to my face that you need to be around. So if you keep that as your major coefficient, that whatever it is, I won't know. And I mistimed it this time and I got it wrong. And I thought I'd do this in 2 years, but it's taking 4.
Right.
Yeah, it's taking 4. But that doesn't mean you're never going to taste success if you stay that. But if you do, the probability of that is very high.
Right. Just to kind of back up into the idea of project versus business to an extent, right? So there's competing thoughts around like, should startups or to businesses which are first coming up, should they be singularly focused or when should they start looking at diversification? I mean, like, and I'm not talking about expansion for scale, but the idea more of like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
No, I think it's a tough one, but I would always vote for focus versus, and I don't mean that means you put all your eggs in one basket because it's a nice British phrase and it's outlived its time. So I don't think we should be thinking of basket and eggs, but I think focus is really as a virtue.
Okay,
just helps you to stay the course, as I say it in many ways.
Okay,
it just helps you to force yourself to find solutions in a very different manner.
Okay,
and if you're cutting your loss, cut your loss and move on. But then because of that, hatching 8 eggs doesn't add up.
Right.
Because you will lose focus. And then you don't know which of the 3 are going to work and which of the 5 that are not going to work.
Right.
So it's very tricky. And I think everyone wants to hedge, but part of hedge is lowering your probability of success.
Okay. So what separates industry leaders from obituaries? Staying the course is crucial, unsung, often thankless task that falls to the person in charge and the core team. My experience tells me that value creation often comes from just lining up with everyone else at the start line. Hit the tape at the finish and keep running. So, I mean, like, I think is this part of what you were discussing earlier? Basically, don't stop. May I keep going? Is that the same point over here?
It is about keep going because you're not going to be able to time either failure or success.
Right.
So yes, it is about that.
So, I mean, like, again, in terms of pitfalls, right? I mean, like, the idea of keeping going in spite of whatever obstacles may come in front of you, right, is something that I think we try as entrepreneurs. Most people are trying to kind of push along that, right? But I mean, like at some point, they also do feel that there is a point they need to stop.
And I think you need to differentiate between the time when you need to stop and that particular business needs to stop.
Right.
And there's a huge difference between that.
Okay, I'm going to move a little bit to the Bloomberg UTV conversations and the relationship building you were talking about over there, right? Because again, I think a big lesson over there is that you spent 12 months on that just in terms of conversation, right, with them. So
So persistence.
Persistence, right, yeah. So I mean, like, is this something that you think that needs to be done on a regular basis, or because this is Bloomberg that you kind of, I mean, like
no,
the idea...
if you're saying, is persistence a regular feature? No, I think it's not a no and it's not a yes.
Right.
I mean, yeah, generally persistence is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But you could be very time consuming to be persistent. And if
that's
you have multiple
question.
folds on persistence,
Right.
then you have a problem.
Right.
But if you think that for that particular business objective, everything else pales till you get that one thing done to get this one to make a big needle moving difference.
Right.
Then persistence is important.
How often have you faced these issues where you are trying to get something going, but the gestation period between anything moves over there is really, really long? I mean, like, is that something that you've...
I think when you're looking at a B2B business or something where you're subservient and you're contingent on other people or a customer, then you're not in control.
Right.
And therefore, you will have that frustration. You may have that, your inability to really estimate timelines, estimates, results, consequences, everything.
Right.
And I think when you're a B2C business, you have a market out there. You can either work on a consecutive basis or you can work on a combination basis.
Okay.
You can either work by setting the deadlines and working backwards, or you can start working forwards. As first, let me do this, then let me do this, let me do this, versus this is my launch date, now I'm going to work backwards.
Right, okay.
But there you're much more in control.
Right. But the B2B business does have that challenge where you have to kind of...
Yeah, well, in any form, and I'm not saying B2B in a simplistic sense, but anything where you're not in control of your own destiny and you are subservient to another customer, company, partner, or even the government.
Okay. So one of the interesting things I thought about the Bloomberg UTV deal that you mentioned, right? Again, I find that deal really interesting. Success comes through preparation and positioning in the early stages, right? So what that's what you kind of credit for being able to kind of deciding also to persist on it for such a long time. What do you mean by preparation and positioning, right? I mean, like, what kind of preparation, I guess, is clear, but what do you mean by positioning?
Well, I think the positioning is one of need about what you bring to the table, how important your geography or the territory or the company or whatever else, and how important it was for that company, in this case, Bloomberg, to look at a market like India.
Right.
And how you're positioning yourself, you're positioning the market, you're positioning what's in it for them, you're positioning yourself as a partner, all of that. And that's very important because that sticks.
Okay. So, I mean, like, does that identify the points at which you want to persist? I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but it kind of
persistence could be a wild, wild west approach.
Okay.
Persistent may not have the best of planning.
Okay, all right.
Persistent could be exactly what it is. You're not letting go.
Right.
And it could be on a single point. It could be on something where you just want to stay at it. And the other side sees that level of persistence, sees that level of ownership, sees that, my God, if this is how they're going to behave on this, I want to partner with this person because when the problem arrives, I want to stand behind him to solve it.
Interesting. Okay. So I have one last thing to discuss on this chapter. When planning for the future, it's critical to build your team for the long haul too. Your team needs to believe in your vision and commit to not just jumping ship at the appearance of every high wave. That said, you can't always know at the start when you hire who's in for the long term and who will be gone before you said hello. But as a leader, it's for you to spot talent, nurture it, share ideas, involve team members, and reward them until both sides are on the same page. I'd like to understand, what would you look for in team members when you're trying to kind of figure out who is with you for the long haul, right? What are the kind of characteristics you want?
Attitude would be the first one.
Okay.
Problem-solving ability would be the second one.
Okay.
And being able to preempt trends and problems would be 3.
Okay.
These are very simplistic ones, but actually come through conversations that are not agenda-driven, but actually much more casual-driven.
You think that's an important part of getting to get to know people in terms of what their personalities are?
It's very important because at the end of the day, that past experience, whatever else, if you haven't got that right attitude, if you haven't got a problem-solving approach, if you are good at preempting trends and problems, which means you're a great listener, you have a sense of curiosity, you're open-minded, and just how you deal with all of that, because actually that's going to be 80% of what you're going to be dealing with as you go forward.
Right. All right. I think that's a great place to end this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ronnie.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ronnie Screwvala, and you've been listening to my podcast and the multiple chapters of my book, Dream With Your Eyes Open. And I think to that, I've had good chats here. And I think chapter 13, my book, is all about Q&As, and I'm sure there are more Q&As. Happy to answer them. So send them in, and happy to have a dialogue with you on that.
So if you'd like to ask Ronnie a question, send it to us at dreaming@ivmpodcast.com. If selected, we'll read out your question on the last episode and have Ronnie answer it. You can also send a question to us on social media at IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cyrus Says is brought to you by Storytel. Keep in mind that if you go through storytel.com/IVM, you get a 30-day free trial as against a 14-day free trial on the link. Right? It's very simple. All you got to do is log on to storytel.com/IVM. Millions and millions and millions of stories, many written by me.
Hi, I'm Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and listen into the Equity Sahiya podcast brought to you by Motilal Oswal Asset Management Company. The Equity Sahiya podcast offers deep investment insights into the potential of many sectors in India which are growing and have a lot to offer for your portfolio. New episodes out every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or any other app where you get your podcasts from.